Hey y'all, and welcome back to Digital EQ Reimagined. Diedrich here, ready to dive even deeper into this wild world where our hearts and our screens collide. How's your emotional firewall holding up this week? Now, if you're just tuning in or if your brain's already on to the next scroll, no judgment, let's take a beat and remember what we unpacked in episode 2. We rolled up our sleeves and got into the what and why of digital emotional intelligence, right? We talked about how those classic EQ skills we've all heard about, self awareness, empathy, communication, don't always translate so well in digital spaces. Trying to read tone in a text, trying to connect in a group chat or decode a Slack emoji feels more like deciphering hieroglyphics than having a conversation sometimes. And we named the two big hurdles. One, traditional EQ wasn't built for the digital chaos we live in now. And two, learning emotional skills somehow became a luxury product locked behind overpriced workshops and leadership boot camps that don't always trickle down to real life. But then we started shifting gears. We broke open that digital EQ toolbox, those 5 core principles we need to thrive online: digital self awareness, algorithmic influence management, emotional boundary setting, manipulation detection, and digital response regulation. That last one, critical, because sometimes your thumbs want to clap back before your brain has had its coffee. And that's speaking from experience. And here's the thing we landed on: digital EQ isn't about tossing out traditional emotional intelligence. No, no. It's about evolving it, adapting our core human skills to a world where our connection, communication, and even our care happens on a screen. And that brings us to today. Because if we understand what digital EQ is, then the next big question is this: what's the future look like? What happens if we fully embrace these digital EQ skills? Or what's the cost if we don't? That's where it gets real interesting, y'all. Because as we walk this digital frontier, the choices we make about our emotional sovereignty right now are shaping the emotional landscape of tomorrow. So today, we're going to take a look ahead into what I call the four futures framework. These aren't sci fi fantasies, these are real possibilities. Will we drift into emotional dystopia? Will we fight back in an emotional rebellion? Will we merge completely with machine in an emotional singularity? Or will we rise into an emotional renaissance? The future isn't something we wait for, it's something we feel into and build. Let's get into it. Now, before we dive into these four futures, let's pause for a second and get real about what's actually at stake here. We touched on this in episode 1, but it bears repeating. The war for your emotional sovereignty has already begun. And no, it's not loud. There are no sirens, no declarations. It's a silent war. There are no breaking news headlines telling you that your emotions are under siege. No alerts that say, hey, we're collecting the deepest parts of your inner world. So we're already playing catch up. We're talking about social platforms that are constantly mining emotional data. And this goes way beyond what you post, like, or share. Emotional data is your tone in a message. It's how long you hover on a post. It's your facial expressions on Zoom. It's your heart rate from a wearable. It's biometric signals, behavioral patterns, subtle cues you don't even realize you're emitting. A full emotional profile being built, updated, and sold in real time. And here's where it gets deeper. Some governments are already integrating affect computing systems into everyday life. Take China, for example. In classrooms, AI powered cameras are tracking children's facial expressions to see if they're paying attention. That's not a Black Mirror episode. That's now. Meanwhile, in the corporate world, like we talked about in episode 2, businesses are weaving affect computing into their hiring and promotion decisions. Who gets hired? Who gets promoted? Who gets dismissed? And all of this happening without explicit consent. Let's be honest. When's the last time you actually read a privacy policy top to bottom? Exactly. Most of us are just living our lives, checking our notifications, answering emails, scrolling through reels, and not realizing that quietly our emotional autonomy is being eroded. Your ability to feel what you want to feel, to choose your responses, to decide how your emotional world is navigated. That sovereignty is under quiet attack. And let me be crystal clear here. The Four Futures framework isn't some far-off sci-fi fantasy. The onset of one or more of these emotional futures could begin by 2030. This is happening. It's already in motion. So with that in mind, we need to look ahead with both imagination and intention. Because the future is emotional and it's already arriving. Let's talk about what that future could look like. Imagine this. You wake up and reach for your phone, not because you want to, but because it's the only way to start your day. Your watch is already buzzed, syncing your heart rate to your calendar. Your boss knows you're anxious before you do. You open your feed. The first 3 posts are designed to spike emotion: rage, envy, urgency. And it works. You're already on edge. You haven't even brushed your teeth. Every message you send is auto-analyzed. Your work emails get flagged if your tone sounds too emotional. Your insurance company has AI watching your micro expressions during telehealth calls. Your child's school sends you an alert. Your daughter showed signs of inattentiveness today based on facial tracking data. You want to disconnect, but you can't, because disconnection means disobedience, and disobedience means exclusion. There's no law protecting your emotional data, no opt-out button for how your feelings are harvested, monetized, weaponized. You look in the mirror and ask yourself, when did I stop feeling safe just feeling? That is emotional dystopia. It's what happens when we choose convenience over consent. When we ignore the warnings, click accept, and keep scrolling. It's the future that waits quietly in the wings. When we decide not to decide. Now, imagine something else. Same world, same systems, but this time people start to feel it. Not just the fatigue, but the fury. The algorithm shows you one too many trauma reels. Your boss asks you to smile more on Zoom because the client prefers positive energy. Your insurance premium spikes after their affect computing system flags your emotional volatility. You're done. You log off, you silence the group chat. You delete your fitness tracker and switch your webcam off. During calls, you stop feeding the machine. And you're not the only one. A wave begins to build. Quiet at first, but steady. Employees start pushing back.
No, I won't take an emotional intelligence assessment scored by a computer.
Parents flood school board meetings.
My child is not a data point. Their emotions are not for sale.
Creatives start watermarking their feelings.
If you want my emotional response, ask.
Online communities organize, not for followers, for freedom. You see new platforms rise, decentralized, ad-free, built on consent, digital cooperatives where users set the rules, not advertisers. Affect computing becomes regulated. Emotional data becomes protected. There are protests, but there's also poetry. There's resistance, but there's reclamation too. People begin reclaiming their emotions, not just from big tech, but from themselves. No more performing, no more curating your grief or filtering your joy. It's messy, raw, and real. That is emotional rebellion. It's what happens when we wake up and say, you can have my clicks, but you can't have my core. It's the fire that burns after the numbness. It's the uprising of the unseen. It's what happens when we finally say, you will not profit off my pain. Let's pause right here. Because out of all the futures I'm about to walk you through, emotional rebellion, that's the one I believe is most likely. Why? Because history shows us. We don't fight for something until we've already lost it. We're not proactive by nature. We're reactive. We wait for systems to break before we demand change. We wait for the consequences to hit home before we rise. And I think that's exactly how this will play out. We'll quietly slip into emotional dystopia. Not because we want to, but because we weren't paying attention. The platforms will mine, the policies will lag, and the profit model will keep winning. Then, voices like mine, voices like yours, will rise, shouting from the rooftops, "This is what's happening." And slowly, people will begin to hear it. They'll start to feel it. And they'll wake up from the digital numbness and join the rebellion. They'll push back, they'll organize, they'll fight for laws like the EU's AI Act. But even stronger, more expansive, more rooted in justice. But here's the truth. That fight won't be easy. It won't be quick. This technology is already embedded in our careers, our healthcare, our insurance, our schools, our relationships. We're not battling a feature, we're battling a framework. And that's going to take time, maybe longer than a generation, maybe longer than a lifetime, but still, I believe we'll prevail. Because rebellion, if sustained, can lead to something more, a future where we don't just reclaim our feelings, we celebrate them, protect them, build systems that honor them. But here's the question I keep asking myself, and I want to ask you too. Do we have to go through dystopia to get there? Do we have to burn out before we wake up? Or can we do the unthinkable and skip the breakdown altogether? Can we choose the Renaissance? I'd love to believe that's possible. But if I'm being honest, I think we're already sliding into dystopia. And the only real choice left is, how long do we stay there? Now, imagine this. There's no more emotional chaos, no more uncertainty. Your digital assistant wakes you each morning with a greeting tailored to your biometric mood profile. You don't have to think about how you feel because the system already knows. It's read your sleep data, measured your heart rate variability, analyzed the tone of your voice when you hit snooze. Your fridge offers meals to match your emotional needs. Your playlist adapts to your cortisol levels. Your therapist is a high-functioning AI that knows your trauma history better than you do. You never get into fights with friends. Social conflict has been smoothed out by emotion-modulating filters. Your messages are pre-checked for tone. Disagreements get rerouted through a mood mediation app. Your workplace, fully optimized. Emotion AI tracks engagement, stress, focus. Team communication is data enhanced and friction free. Everything works, everything flows. No mess, no noise, no misunderstandings, no humanity. Because here's the cost. You haven't felt discomfort in weeks. You haven't cried without being offered serotonin boosting stimuli. You haven't had a moment of true privacy in years. Your emotions have been outsourced. Your inner life has become infrastructure. The tech is seamless. The data is deep. The control is invisible. You've been merged. That is emotional singularity. It's what happens when the line between support and surveillance, insight and intrusion becomes so blurred, you stop noticing it altogether. It's peace, but it's purchased. It's harmony, but hollowed. It's the cost of outsourcing emotion to machines that don't have souls. And the scariest part, it doesn't feel like dystopia. It feels like relief. Until one day you realize you haven't made a decision for yourself in weeks. You haven't asked yourself, how do I feel? Because the system already answered for you. And now, imagine this. You wake up, not to an alert, but to stillness. Not to a device reading your vitals, but to the quiet whisper of your own breath. You've reclaimed your mornings. Your emotions are not a feed. Your joy is not performative. Your grief doesn't need to be algorithm friendly to be honored. In this world, emotional data isn't mined. It's respected. It's treated as sacred, an extension of your personhood, not a product. Consent is the foundation. Transparency is the standard. You know who has access to your feelings and why. In schools, children are taught emotional sovereignty alongside math and science. In workplaces, well-being isn't gamified. It's protected. Mental health isn't a trend. It's a right. You move through digital spaces with intention. Your tech doesn't try to steer your emotions. It supports them, like a well-trained partner, not a puppet master. Artists create from unfiltered emotion. Communities build tools rooted in collective care. Empathy is encoded, it's cultivated. And yes, we still use technology, but we use it with awareness, with boundaries, with soul. That is emotional renaissance. It's the world we arrive at after the rebellion. Or maybe the one we could reach before it, if we choose to. It's a future where we remember that being human is messy, beautiful, and worth preserving. It's not perfect, but it's ours. So here's the question I'll leave with you. Which future are you preparing for? Not intentionally, but unconsciously. Which one are your habits feeding? And which one are you willing to interrupt for the sake of something better? Now look, if history has taught us anything, it's that we often wait until we're deep in the fire before we try to put it out. That's why emotional rebellion feels like the most likely future, because we usually don't fight until we've already lost something. But that's not the only path. The emotional renaissance is not just a dream. It's a viable future, but only if we start building toward it now, not when the damage is done, but before. And here's the part we can't forget. The tools to get there, we already have them. Those 5 digital EQ principles from episode 2, they're not just theory. They're the daily practices that can steer us away from dystopia and fast track us toward renaissance. Digital self-awareness can help us catch manipulation before it shapes our mood. Algorithmic influence management lets us reclaim our attention and intention. Boundary setting protects our energy. Manipulation detection safeguards our truth. And response regulation keeps us from feeding the fire. This is how we prepare. This is how we resist. This is how we rise. And then ask yourself, which future are you willing to fight for? Because the truth is, we don't get the emotional future we deserve. We get the one we're willing to build together. So let's build well. Let's build wisely. Let's build emotionally sovereign. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the 4 futures. Next time, we'll explore what it actually takes to prepare for an emotional renaissance. Not just as individuals, but as communities, as companies, and as a culture. I'm your host and digital friend, Diedrich. Stay emotionally sovereign, stay digitally smart, and remember, stronger emotions, not stronger algorithms. See you in the next one.